Hello, everyone. Feel a little dwarfed by the matters that the professor discussed, but Russia, right? Another Big Bang subject. How many of you have read an article about Russia in the past week? All right, big show of hands, right? And Russia dominates the news cycle, I would say, ever since 2016 elections. After years of oblivion, Russia now is on the front pages of American newspapers and magazines, to which I at times contribute, trying to share my thoughts on the matter. Because Russia dominates my mind also. As a Russian who is living in the West, I have witnessed great reversals in the relationship between our countries. And it's just in the last 30 years, which is very short, not only in cosmic terms, but even in human terms, right? I mean, 30 years ago was not too far, at least not in my mind. And so we have come in the span of my living time on this earth, from Cold War to the warming of Gorbachev's perestroika and summits in Reykjavik and all that, people's diplomacy, as it was called back then in 1987, when there were first TV bridges established between our countries that commanded multi-million audiences in Soviet Union, though here I heard they were just a blip on the radar, but they were real, and that sort of renaissance of the relationship between the countries was something very special and something that certainly formed my perceptions of America. Now, and there were a lot of there was a lot of exchange going on in our country. There were exchange programs, there was business, there was a lot of Russians all of a sudden traveling abroad for the first time in generations, freely. So by and large, Russia was on the course to become part of the West. At least that's how I perceived it when I left in 1996 to study abroad. I was the beneficiary of that great shift from Cold War to friendship and embrace by Russia of Western democracies that was started, perhaps ironically for some of you, by Ronald Reagan, who is not considered to be, a major liberal Democrat in this country, to say the least. But Reagan was the person who said, bring down that wall, Mr. Gorbachev. So, and since then, what happened? 2014, Russia annexed Crimea under Putin's leadership, and there are sanctions that keep being imposed on Russia. Russia retaliates by its own counter-sanction, as it often does against its own people, because the sanctions against the West are not easy to stage, even for Vladimir Putin. So I struggle with the question, what is the real Russia? Was it the Russia of my youth, of perestroika and friendship and TV bridges and people's diplomacy, or is the revanchist version of Russia that Putin is promoting today domestically and abroad is their Russia? So because those questions have been very much on my mind for a couple years, I wrote a book called Russia, Putin's Playground, which was sort of a flash guide to Russian power and a look into the three major constituencies that kind of interact on this giant stage of Russia: the Russian people, the Russian state, and the dissidents, the people, the dissenters who go between the two. And so in 2018, on Ollie's invitation, I adopted that book as a framework for the course Understanding Russia that I will be teaching here in Lafayette, and I have taught in the fall in the Berkeley location, and we had some great times, and that's why I'm here today. So in teaching that course, I adopt a highly personalized approach, so I will be filtering larger historical and political events that happened in Russia from the times of formation of the Russian state and to modern day Russia through a personal family lens. I am endowed with a very strange kind of memory. I remember a lot of things about Soviet Union that even my mother doesn't remember, though she should have. But my mother, what she has done is she sort of obsessively collected all the photographs and glued them into a very large family album. So I illustrate what I talk about with some family examples and personal vignettes that will, I hope, bring to life those larger sort of cosmic events that happened in Russia in the 20th century with the revolution and then the collapse of the Soviet Union, sort of with example of my family and the family of those who I know. I also will be showing some clips from the Russian operas, ballets, cinemas that are, I know those are always crowd pleasers, but I'm going to try to sort of spice them up and show you what people in Russia consider iconic ballets, shows, and movies, which often, particularly in the movie sphere, they don't coincide with what a Western perception of iconic Russian literature and cinema is. So that will be fun, and I try in as much as possible to translate them as I go along. We'll also do some literary readings, some brief literary readings during the course, and we'll study some Russian and do some Russian trivia quizzes, so trying to keep it fun. And structurally, the course will be a 6-part, and we will start by kind of a holistic picture of Russia today from the political, economic, and cultural standpoint, and then in the next few classes zoom deeper on history of the Russian nation, history of the Russian state, because this is where you really look for clues in Russia's behavior today. Putin didn't happen overnight. He is a continuation of Russian sort of system of autocrats and that produces this kind of people. And so we're just trying to look at the system and the aberrations from the system and try to understand, what is the true Russia, which is a big question. I am not sure that we will arrive at an answer, but what my hope for this course is to leave you with a more nuanced picture of the country that is so much right now in the talk and the hype and the spin. It's a complex place. Russia is extremely complex, as any country with a long history, and Russia has been around, at least for, as a state since the 9th century, and there's a lot that has been happening to that country. So we're going to be probably scratching the surface in those 6 weeks, but at least I view each of those lectures as sort of providing you with an entry point to go deeper, and not necessarily guiding you, but pointing you where, if you want more, you go that way. And I also view it as I guess maybe because I was formed by perestroika and those kind of years of big rapprochement between our countries, I view it as a cultural exchange. One of the beauties of the Berkeley class that I taught was how many people came out to me personally, and then during the class raising their hand and sharing their own stories of their relationship to Russia. I was surprised to find out that at least 1/3 of people in that classroom had Russian heritage of some kind going back. And it was, I learned that Kerensky lived in the Bay Area, and a lot of sort of Russian famous people who left Russia after the revolution ended up in the Bay Area. And so you come across those people and you kind of engage in this cultural exchange. So I'm as much here to teach as I am to learn from you, and I'm really excited that I will be having this opportunity presented by Ollie to do this again. And yeah, that's it. And there is also going to be an event at the Commonwealth Club on April 11th where I will be giving a talk. It's co-sponsored by Ollie, and it's going to be sort of about Vladimir Putin's quest for greatness and where it led Russia. So that's on April 11th. I think there will be more information in the Oli newsletter. So thank you.